Welcome back to the Creative Process Podcast with myself, Jared Klein. Today on episode 40, obviously we have a guest on today. We have Crew on, but we'll get into Crew a little bit in a little bit here. I just want to show some thanks to the people that come back and people that listen to the podcast. I hope every week that you listen to the podcast, you're getting great information from the people that we have on. So fantastic. Also, I like hearing feedback. If shit's crackly or if cameras are fucking up, or you think the graphics could improve or the style of things, let me know. Let me hear about it. I'm open to all that shit. So yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming out today. This will be a great episode. Anyways, Crew, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to kind of hang out with someone we've solidified never met in person, but we've met each other on Twitter.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
No problem. But yeah, so I know we are kind of excited to get into what we're going to talk about today. Well, not kind of excited. I'm pretty excited. But if you could introduce yourself, kind of, however deep you want to go, to the people that don't know who you are, and then we'll kind of hop into everything.
Sure, absolutely. Like you said, my name's Crew. I've been designing professionally for the last 10 years or so, and I started out in sports, and then I kind of veered away for a little bit and just kind of did some contract freelance work for a couple of years, got my hands dirty and wet, and just kind of said, hey, let's find out what's out there. What do I want to do? What don't I want to do? Which I think is an important thing in any designer's career, is to find out, hey, what you don't want to do, because then you can help find what you do want to do.
For sure.
And then was in-house designer for a metal supply company down here in Dallas, Texas for a couple of years. And then some lifestyle changes. The wife wanted to stay home with the kiddos and not work, so we found myself a new job to where I am now working in-house for a financial institution and a women's professional soccer team.
That's still, you told me before we started recording, and that's still, oh my goodness. That's
I know,
still like,
it's crazy.
It's one side and it's the other side. It's that's the funniest thing
It's
I've ever heard.
the yin and the yang. You need both. But the prodigal son has returned to sports after, 6 years away?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
It's been a fun couple months back in the sports world.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you for kind of shedding the light on who the amazing Crew. Is it Kinser? Kinser.
Yeah, it's Kinser.
Right?
It's like the baseball player Ian Kinsler without the L.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kinser.
Everyone gets it wrong all the time.
Is it Kinser? Like, is it Kinser or Kinser? With a Z? Like a Z sound?
We pronounce it more with a Z.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so we are going to be talking about basically everything branding today. It's a pretty broad topic. And there's going to be a little bit thing at the end that we're going to kind of get into, which I'm exponentially excited about, because we haven't talked about it in the podcast in a while. But so basically, everything branding. You have kind of displayed what you do, and now you're kind of dabbling back into sports. But if people look at your portfolio, which will be your website, which will be, by the way, for the viewers, everything related to Crew will be down below. So his Twitter and his portfolio for sure, but obviously post-recording Crew, if you want me to add anything else, I can do that too. But
absolutely,
connect with Crew down below. So that's a little plug. I'll say this at the end as well, just to remind the people. But you've kind of displayed and kind of stated that, you've kind of worked in a lot of different places, and you have a good grasp on, brand as a whole. And now with what you're doing, you mentioned, working with that women's soccer team. You said you work like social media for that financial institution, right?
Yeah.
So you don't really have to deal with much super branding for
but
that.
I do, because they're actually super strict on it.
Super strict?
They're more strict on it than other places. They are very much, I think day one, they're like, here's your house style guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
This is your Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, cool.
Okay.
And it's fun because, there's always that challenge of, hey, how can we make it stay in brand without being stale, without being the same thing over and over and over and over again,
Hmm.
especially on social media when especially it's all text heavy
Right.
too. So it's a different challenge, but it's a fun one.
Yeah, that was gonna be my follow up question to that. It's like since it's super strict, I've never had to work in a super strict like brand
Yeah.
guideline setting. I mean, there's
Hmm.
always, I mean, every brand that you work with, at least that I've worked with, has had like a, like a very base, like this is how we use our logos. This
Yeah.
is preferred, type that we want to match with
Yeah.
it. And then they have certain lockups, here and there that kind of want to go together. But, nothing super like insane. I guess how strict like you probably would have to be vague about this question, but like how strict like down to the how strict is it if you can kind of describe it in a
Oh,
sense.
so the current branding that this financial institution is, it's pretty strict, but the new one they're coming out with is even more strict.
Mm.
So I mean, but the new one also allows more flexibility while being strict. It's very progressive without being gaudy. It's a weird dichotomy that they have because it's the current one. It's very strict because they only have like one lockup, and like here's your lockup, and this is where it sits in the top left corner, and
Mm.
it has to be in that corner and only that corner. Where the new one has uh, three or four different ones, that was like, hey, for here. And then they're coming into the 21st century of, oh, mobile first. Here's the one that goes on small screens and
Right.
where it goes. And then there's one that splits the screen
Right.
depending on how. So it's a little bit more progressive in style, but still strict on, hey, you can only use this split screen for whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I guess since you mentioned like different variations of lockups and consideration of different mediums and different viewing practices, those you mentioned mobile,
Mm-hmm.
and everything like that. When it comes to a brand, um, considering those types of things, right, is almost essential now. Well,
Oh, yeah.
granted, it probably was essential
Yeah.
back before my time, but now, like, especially within, if we want to use sports as an example, um, the whole aspect of social media in general, rather like so many
Oh,
different types of, there's social media, there's so many different types of social media platforms, but then there's also so many different ways to view
to
things
consume it.
and to consume it, right? So
Yeah.
I guess when it comes to consideration for branding, what are your opinions on that? Like, have you started from the ground up on something like that and then having to consider different aspects of viewing and different aspects of, you know, X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z, if you kind of want to elaborate?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was working on one project where, I mean, it took into consideration the mobile, but also how it sits on a big banner with other competitor logos. It was, you know, they did a lot of trade shows and big conventions. It's like, okay, cool. How are we going to make this logo? Because your current one doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Your current one, you put yourself on a big banner, nobody finds you. You put yourself on a screen, can't read it because it's so dang small.
Mm-hmm.
How can we merge the two? And I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give for that one, um, and I think CJ Zilligan and I talked about this many moons ago, was, hey, design it to scale tiny and it will go big
Mm-hmm.
every time. It will, if it works, the size of a quarter, it will work the size of a billboard. It doesn't always go the other way. And so
Right.
I think it's making sure that when you're designing any piece of asset, but we'll just use the logo for this one, design that logo at half an inch or an inch wide or tall or whatever at that scale first. Like, okay, hey, this is how it's going to be, and then go bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But again, in the flip side, a good soccer team was, I think it was the New York Stockade. It was a it was a low level soccer tier, but they were really good. If they had the logo for this sizes, but anything else was a simplified version.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't have words. It just had a rectangle for where the words would be, but on your screen or on a Twitter profile, it was so similar, and they did such a great job that you're like, I know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need the words.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a lot of thinking beyond just, oh, this is a cool logo. It's how's that logo going to be used?
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose of it? And what are the 1,000 touch points that you can get on it,
Mm-hmm.
and how it affects all of that?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we can sit here and say a logo is so important, right? We can sit here and say that because, I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, that's the face of a brand, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be the most. I would say it's the. Would you say actually? Here's a question. I want to know what you think. Would you say a brand message is almost, if not more important than the visual that goes along with it?
I would say the brand message and or strategy is way more important, because you can have a really crappy logo and have a great brand that everyone loves.
Mm-hmm.
And the flip side is you can have the best logo in the world and have a crappy brand.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Nike logo. Is it that iconic if they were just crappy shoes?
I thought you were going to stop there, and I was like, is it that iconic? I was like,
is it that iconic, like, and recognizable if they sold $5 pairs of shoes that broke in 2 months or whatever?
Right.
You know, and no, they had great strategy and great messaging behind it that helped build that equity up to where they're like, hey, we sell awesome stuff for really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like Nike shoes too. I have so many pairs of shoes.
Love Nike. Yeah. I think like the logo is obviously where everyone starts, right?
Yeah, it's the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun making logos. It's the 1,000 other things that people don't think of that it's like, okay, that's really where the branding and the messaging takes off.
Mm-hmm.
And where you have to think of like, okay, how does this all form together, and how does the message and the feeling and the emotions get to it? You know, like even this, like business cards. Nobody uses business cards anymore, but the people that do, like, that's still a point in your branding. It's like, hey, you can send a message based off, you know, what thickness and stock paper you use for that card.
Mm-hmm. The tactile,
yeah,
you know, it's like a direct way of like,
yeah.
Granted, maybe we're designers, maybe we're just looking into this too much, but it's like, you know, it's a direct way of like almost feeling the brand rather than, you know.
But I mean, I think non-designers too will get that too. It's like, oh, hey, you know, it's a nice card, or it's whatever. There's always an emotion tied to it, and that's what I think branding is really geared towards, is getting down into the emotion that other people feel when interacting with yourself or with that, you know.
Right.
Apple does a great job of it with their products. Whenever you open it, it's an experience opening that laptop or that phone or whatever, as opposed to, you know, my wife has a Lenovo PC. It's just a brown cardboard box with Lenovo in black. I have a MacBook Pro. I open it, it's that nice white box with that plastic cover, and you open it, boom. I mean, that's what you want. Yeah, that's what you want, and that's I think the underlying thing of beyond just. I think that's where you go from logo design to branding work, is when you start being like, how do we get to that? You know, how are you? You know, you see them at a convention. What does the booth feel like? How are you expressing yourself, as opposed to just, here's a logo slapped on something?
What do you think about color theory? Because I personally know fuck all about color theory. I have never dove into that, other than when we talked about it in school. I wanted to get a good grade on whatever we were doing, so then it went right out of my head.
I mean, in all transparency, I skipped color theory in college.
Oh, lucky man.
I skipped it. I think you toe the line with color theory of, like, you know, a lot of financial people are blue. Okay, you want to stay somewhat in the lane of, hey, people can recognize this, but at the same time, like, I had one creative director who, I kid you not, I used red in one thing, and he was like, "Don't ever use red again. It's blood." And I'm like, "It's a brand color." So I mean, it's they have their you know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you know, purple is royalty or yellow is whatever. Sure, fine.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's like this looks better.
So when it comes to those, like I get like the emotions because like I think that's just a
Yeah,
natural thing, right? But
yeah,
it's just based off of I don't want to call them cliches, but it's like
it is.
like natural type of reactions to specific,
Yeah,
that's just what it is. But I guess in the space that we're kind of working in, like when it comes to like you branding the or helping with the sports
yeah,
team and me working within sports, blues can be used for fire or purple can be used for
yeah.
like something
There,
super clean. So it's like I feel like color, yes, it gives a message, but when you add a style to it and the
it's.
whole aspect of the brand in itself, it
I
kind of
mean,
comes down
I
to
think
more of an
it's.
aesthetic rather than a
Yeah,
feeling.
and I think it's more if you have a good color palette
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to puke green and pink. Like that just doesn't look good.
It depends.
But at the end of the day, if a client came to me and said, "Hey, I want these colors," I'll be like, "You shouldn't, but if you want it,
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it to you."
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
we could just guide the conversation, but
Mm-hmm.
it's there are some things. Do you even need color?
Mm.
I mean, I have a buddy of mine, another design buddy of mine. He was showing me a mark, and I was like, "Dude, I know he said he wanted gold and black. Show him black and white.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't need color. That's too good of a mark that you don't need it."
Mm-hmm.
He showed it to him. The client was like, "I don't want color. I want black and white." Like, so color theory, like, okay, cool. Like,
mm-hmm.
do you actually need it? I
Mm-hmm.
love a good black and white with a hint of color. That's
Yeah,
a great look.
yeah, like using a color as the accent or the tertiary, and then keeping
Yeah,
black and white as the main. Yeah, for sure. Hmm.
love that one.
I feel like that's. I don't know if that's like a more recent thing, but you're seeing a lot more of that.
Yeah, I think it's a trend that we're seeing now
Hmm.
recently. Just it'll come in and go. I mean, at least we're away from just the boring sans serif fonts, right?
Boring
That was dull.
blocky.
Yeah, that was dull. I was like, oh man.
I
But
mean, they
yeah,
look
I like
professional. They
it.
look professional when they're used right.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. But when everything follows the same trend, it's like, well,
Hmm.
cool. I also like bucking trends.
What'd you say?
Bucking.
Bucking,
Yeah.
bucking trains.
Trends.
Oh, trends. What's
Yeah.
bucking?
Like you just go against the grain, be like, yeah, I'm kick that one.
Oh,
Must be a southern thing.
yeah. I was like, what's that? What?
Wow, my Texas is coming
I
out.
was thinking of like a horse. I was like, well, is
Yeah.
that where it comes from?
Yeah.
Trying to buck someone off?
Yeah. You buck the trend. You just kind of kick that trend off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you have like an example of when you
Oh man, where's one that I did the other day?
or like the
Oh, I mean,
the thought about the consideration for something along those lines?
yeah.
You know,
I
like
mean, like, just a good one. Like the metal company I work for, they fell into that sans serif trap, and I was just like, guys, really?
I'm actually gonna pull
Let's
up
just.
your just so I can. Is it the one
Oh,
on your portfolio? King Metals, right?
yeah, yeah.
That is a
That
nice
one.
one. That is a
That
nice
yeah,
one.
that was a fun one. They that one, and that was a good one because I had all the pieces. I mean, that was a fun, and there's a lot of forms that they had, so it was just a lot of somewhat tedious stuff. But hey, how does this form now function as a whole
Mm-hmm.
inside this new look of this more architectural and strong design as opposed to the trendy
Mm-hmm.
sans serif font that they had. But
Well, I mean the boldness, the boldness of the type, that works.
Yeah,
That kind of encompasses that,
and
strong sturdiness.
yeah,
But then,
and they didn't like lions, they didn't like crowns, they didn't like any of that kind of motif. So it's like, how do we invoke kingly
hmm
without those? And it was like, well, did it even need an icon? Does it need an icon to go with the marker? Can it just be? So I was like, let's just go straight word
right.
mark and come up with something strong that works across the board of, hey, how do you make it work really big on the sign outside the front, on a trade show booth, yet also on a mobile phone where they buy it,
hmm
and then how does it affect the in-house brands as
hmm
well?
hmm
And so that was a fun one to do.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I mean, if I looked at it and it just said king, well, granted, you kind of just need
Yeah,
this would be stupid, but like you wouldn't really think, like I wouldn't really think it's a metals company unless it said metals. To be
yeah.
honest, is that kind of what
And
they were going for?
that's kind of what I was pushing for. It's like you don't need to.
Yeah.
I've so one of the things that they taught when I was in school, I don't know what they're teaching now, is they're like, logos got to showcase what you do in your logo. And I'm like, why? Like, that's why I'm going to pick on a certain industry real quick right now because I think they do a horrible job, and it's
Okay.
the real estate industry. Every real estate logo looks the same because they all have the same house or that shape. It's like, you don't need a house in your logo for a realtor to say, hey, I'm a realtor. Like, that's how you get logos that just look the same. Is you try to say, this is what I do in this logo, or tell all of this. Starbucks logo. You don't know they sell coffee.
hmm
You know they sell coffee because you just know they do. But if you just looked at the mark, they don't sell coffee. You're like, okay,
Honestly, you
cool.
wouldn't even know what it was unless you read
No,
into it.
no, I didn't know what it was for years until they told me what it was. I was like, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah,
You
freaking
know,
siren. Who's gonna know that shit?
yeah, but you just don't need all that information in there. It's like I did one for a realtor many years ago. Unfortunately, he's now passed away, but I put a cardinal in his logo because that was his big thing. Like, part of his story was, anytime he needed a big decision or had something up in front of him, he would say, hey, the Lord would send me this cardinal to tell me, yeah, this is the right way to go. And I was
hmm
like, that's a great story. That's a great thing to have.
hmm
Let's just put it in here. And then people are going to ask, why do you have a cardinal in your logo when you're a realtor?
hmm
And then he could tell his story and do whatever. That's what I love about the branding thing. It's like, hey, where can we get some personal tie
hmm
from your story, bring it back, and then tie it into whatever you're doing?
hmm
The cardinal. You don't see realtors with cardinals.
Well, that's really how people develop that connection. Like they're
Yeah.
not gonna develop the connection because they see the logo. It's how the brand makes them feel. Back to like
Mm-hmm.
how we are talking about business cards or like the
Yeah.
impression. The initial impression of the brand. If that strikes a conversation, anything that strikes the conversation for them to ask more about the brand is a good thing. And
Yeah.
wonder about the brand.
Yeah. You got to get that. You got to get that emotion part to be like, oh yeah, that's really where you're going to connect with them, because we're all people. At the
hmm
end of the day, we're people. We're humans. We like that connection. It's you know I've told my friends this too, and said it earlier.
hmm
You can have the worst logo in the world and a great brand
hmm
and a great company or whatever. You can, and vice versa.
hmm
But if we can dive deeper beyond just the pretty and get that emotional connection to them, or something that ties into your story
hmm
and what you're trying to convey, even better.
I think I think sports teams do this the best.
Yeah,
Granted,
they're really good.
they kind of have a fan base to base it off
They
of.
do,
That
and
kind
they
of
also
establishes
have
the message itself.
yeah, and they also have the flexibility to branch out because
Mhm.
every year, they're trotting out new campaigns and new techniques and new what designs or whatever, and they can do that, and then they can hook the next person in through a different thing. But I think the best way that sports does is, they focus it on, that connection of the memories that you get
Mhm.
at the sports. You hear everyone tell. It's like, man, I remember the first time going to the stadium, just walking through and just seeing the stadium open or whatever. I
Mhm.
mean, they're great about it.
Mhm.
It's fantastic.
Mhm.
I mean, I love
Especially,
it.
well, granted, like
Right.
usually a lot of the sports that, well, the popular ones in the United States, we'll use the United States for example, because we obviously both
Yeah.
live here. The popular sports, there's organizations and professional teams with
Yeah.
rich history in it, right? So it's like, talk about this. Like, granted, with the new, let's just say, like, are you into soccer at all?
I I'm a soccer fan by proxy in two ways.
Okay.
One, because one of my best friends is a huge Manchester United fan,
Okay.
and two, because
Yeah.
I do a lot of work in soccer now. So it's great. And I've come back into the soccer world back in 2016, 2017. I had a good run in a freelance in the soccer world.
Yeah, I think like, I guess using new, like, because there's a lot of, like, that's one sport that new teams pop up all the time, right? Well,
Yes.
in the MLS, granted, I don't know really about the NWSL, but in the MLS, like, there's a new team every 2 years, so like they have to start from, granted, they have the location, right?
Yeah.
Especially sports teams, they have a city to kind of base their brand message and their character, and their
Yeah.
whole brand as a whole is based off of usually a city, because they want to develop that hometown connection. They want to develop that main fan base. So it's like, I guess I'll use like Charlotte FC for example, or
Gorgeous.
yeah, just because one of my good buddies is Ryland. He's the lead designer there. But
Gorgeous.
he,
Give him my props next time you talk to him. Big fan. I
yeah.
use him. He's on my mood board almost every day.
Yeah, they develop awesome creative over there. Their whole team, not just designers, but their video production team and everything like that. They're doing a great job. But like, Charlotte is such a great city, such a popular city for the game of soccer. But the Atlanta was the closest team, in
Yeah.
that realm. That's kind of their rival now. But like, they fit in so nicely with, granted, they're co-owned. Well, they're owned by the Panthers, so there's already that kind of fan connection there. They kept that
Yeah.
blue and black and white, you know, colorway, or color palette, not colorway.
Yeah.
We're not talking about shoes. Color palette. They kept that, so there's already that assimilation there between the fan bases and people being interested. But being able to, it says a lot for a new team, especially like their first game, to sell out that whole stadium, whether it was like
Yeah.
60
That's
something
crazy.
thousand people. Like, they were up there. I mean, still, they're up there with
Yeah.
competing against Atlanta United in attendance, and Atlanta United is continuously, even since inception, they're the most like attended MLS team, in the league
They do a
since
fantastic job.
their inception. But like, being able to develop that brand message and be able to develop and connect with the people of the Carolinas. Like, they're finally giving a super popular
Yeah.
soccer area in the United States a team, and that fits it super well. And I know Panthers fans, whether they suck or whether they're really good, they're super loyal fans. So like, it's kind of like a natural thing over there. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, I'm kind of rambling, but it amazed me how much
Yeah.
pull they had from the get go. And I mean,
That's great.
obviously, just making a team isn't
Yeah.
gonna really get that pull. Whatever they do, marketing side and developing
They
that brand, getting their brand out there,
get in the community.
yeah, community
Yeah.
involvement and everything like that, and the consideration for how important their fan base. That's why I love soccer so much. Soccer is the best sport. I don't care what
It's
anyone says. Soccer is the best sport on the planet Earth, just because of the fact of how invested the fans are. and
So invested.
how connected the team is. Like, you can have crazy fan bases. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the Eagles fans are crazy. They suck, but they're like, those are crazy fans. But like, they're not as connected to the team as, like, I guess what would be a team on par. I guess let's just use like Atlanta United. Their fan base is insane. Whether they're sucking, I mean, they had a down year last year and they were still selling out their stadium. So it's like, you know, I guess I think you were gonna add in. I'm sorry if I interrupted.
Cowboys, they're Cowboys, mediocre.
Yep,
and
Cowboys.
They fill out that stadium every game. They're just the most mediocre team.
Yes, Cowboys. Granted, I guess I just thought of fans that were like assholes, but still like super committed, and the Eagles came into my head right away.
Oh, they are.
I hate Eagles fans.
For being the city of brotherly love.
Not much brotherly love going around in there when it's a football game.
No, but we digress. But yeah, it's getting in the community and getting that buy-in. Mm-hmm. Again, it goes back to getting that emotional connection to everything, which I think is really the hard part. But I think it's that strong pound and entrance that you can make into a branding project is being like, okay, how can we evoke this emotion and get someone invested in this beyond just, hey, we made something look cool. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love making things look cool, and sometimes that's all you need is something that just looks cool. You know, mm-hmm. I love all the marketing BS. So they're like, this is here for XYZ, and this is here for another reason, and tells a story. I'm like, nah, sometimes I just liked it there because it looked good. Mm-hmm. But you just got to get that. You got to go beyond that. And I think that's where school comes into play, is being like, hey, I want to learn you how to get here. Mm-hmm. And then real world experience will get you beyond that line of, hey, I just made a good, pretty logo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that segue, though. I like that segue into
into education.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I guess like for the people that have listened to the podcast for a while, this has been a topic that has been on the podcast a couple times. But Crew suggested it, and I was like, yeah, let's go back there. This is something. Let's talk. And he also said pre-recording that he had some hot takes. So
hot takes.
You're kind of setting it up for stuff to come up here. What's going on, man? What are your hot takes? Oh, he's silent.
You don't need design. You don't need design school.
That's it. That's the hot take. I could have said that.
If my son came to me, granted he's not old enough to go to school, but if he came to me and said, hey, I want to be a designer like you, Dad, I'm like, cool. He's like, and I want to go to this university. Be like, no, you're not going there. You don't need a piece of paper to get a job in design. I've hired people before, and literally education's like the last thing I look at, because you can have the grades, you can go to school, you can do whatever, and be a really crappy designer or whatever. Mm-hmm. You cannot go to school and learn it yourself. Granted, I'm also self-taught too. I took a couple of I picked up some classes in college. So yes, double-edged sword.
Did you
got an education in some design, but
did you go to school for strictly design?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
No, my degree is actually in marketing,
which is it's a good double up. It's a very good double.
It's a great double up. It's a great double up. It's a great pairing. And I have an art minor. With, I think there's a focus of like ad, some design. I don't know, but
yeah,
like
specifics.
Like I don't, especially with how much free information is out there right now to learn. Why would you spend $100,000 to learn it when you can learn it for free or teach yourself or just practice and get better? Mm-hmm. That's kind of my thing. Like there is a place for school for other career fields, and there is a place for school, some certain proper education for things, but do you actually need a bachelor's in graphic design to be a designer? And I personally don't think so. I could care less whether or not you do it because everything that I learned mostly on the job. You know, this how to use programs, how to be better, what to look for, what, makes this tick versus that, and what's gonna, where does the eye go or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
how any of this works. 90% of it I learned after school. What I learned in school was make a logo. I mean, I literally had a class where it was like, hey, make this restaurant logo and menu and other pieces of collateral for this made up restaurant that had no brief, no creative input from the people who are actually paying you to do this job. That it's like almost like these projects are fun for school and college kids because, creativity just runs wild, and I'm all for letting your creativity go and
Mm-hmm.
just see where it takes you and just be like, yeah, I wish we had more freedom in that in the real world of like clients that are like, just go explore first and then come back and then we'll figure out, some other things, as opposed to being so
Mm-hmm.
we're going to keep you in this little silo in this box of, hey, what we have to do, and designed by committee, which is the worst thing in the world. I hate by committee, but that's another thing. Like, that's all college was really good for, was just flexing and testing your creativity. But I've yet to come to a project in the real world where it's like, oh, it's exactly like it was in college, where I just had free reign and I can make whatever look cool and do whatever. There are briefs, there are, do's and don'ts. There is, you know, the president of marketing communication and whatever has a say. There's the CEOs, there's the board members, there's all these people that have a say in it that you just don't get in college. And it's like, let's just get some real world experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know the programs, know some general aesthetics of design,
Mm-hmm.
and get making some cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was helping a buddy of mine this week. He's prepping for an interview for a new job, and he was like, "What projects should I put in my portfolio?" I said, "Your best ones." Well, they're fake. Okay, cool. Give them your best ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, just do your best stuff. They'll see the good work through it. Do it doesn't have to be real world. A lot of stuff that it's on my Instagram is stuff that I'm like, just gonna do it for fun because I want to do something fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I think as designers, especially in branding world, we just want to, at least for me, I like to push and be progressive. Like, hey, let me go outside of the brief or whatever and push that creativity. And I think that's what a lot of the fun stuff that I do is just to fill that itch
Mm-hmm.
of, I don't have a brief. I can make something cool. And I think that's a great thing about college was creativity. You just do whatever you want, make it however you want it to look. But the real world's not like that, unfortunately, which stinks. But that's my take is,
I feel like,
keep just get the experience and just keep making some
yeah,
stuff.
for sure. We're in such a unique career path. Not just designers, but anyone dealing with art, to where
Yeah.
our work kind of speaks for itself, whether we're
Mm-hmm.
qualified, with a
Yeah.
piece of paper or not. Like we have like visible proof in portfolios that
Mm-hmm.
shows that we're qualified,
Yeah.
I mean, there are like sayings, okay, going to like a 4-year university or a 2-year tech college or whatever the situation is, getting that degree that like proves you being committed to something for the long term. Okay, then what about all the self-driven projects in my portfolio to build up that portfolio?
Yeah.
Or what about all the back-end learning that I did on my own to get to a spot where I am now? You know, to where a degree, it's not physical, you know, collegiate and educational proof that I'm qualified, you know, to where, granted, this is me talking with a degree, right? My degree is,
I have one too.
my degree is right here. This is my degree. So it's like,
love it. But
it's like,
when I graduated, I think when I graduated, it was because we didn't have, golly, I'm going to sound so old here. YouTube and the vast amount of education, YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't the powerhouse of a search engine that it is now. You know, it was people uploading videos of, you know, a monkey running around in a bathing suit or whatever. You know, it was low quality. Someone just pulled it up on their flip phone and got it up there. I know, aging myself so much with flip phones.
No, I don't worry. I had a flip phone. That was my first.
But
phone.
I mean, it's just the shift in the last 10 years. It's like, yeah, I would have 10 years ago. I'm like, yeah, I gotta get the degree because that's just the nature of it and how it was. Now, if I were any kid, 18-year-old shoes, being like, man, do I even need to go? Do you? I mean, there is a case. I will make a case that, you know, some people just aren't very good at self-teaching themselves.
So you need direction.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a person who's like, you know, I have to be in a classroom and someone has to teach me to learn. I can't learn it on my own. Fine. Go to school. Do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But if there's a person that, you know, can self-teach themselves and can, you know, get on YouTube, get on whatever, just get their hands on the program and play around with it and learn these things, find a designer that you just look up to and ask them questions. I have yet to meet a designer really that is unwilling to talk to another designer, however it be. I'm a big fan of sharing the knowledge that I have to others, you know.
That's why I made this podcast.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like I tell my junior designer all the time, you know, I think the first day she started, I said, hey, you have a question, you don't know what you do, or you want to know how you did something or whatever, ask me. I'll either tell you because I know it, or we'll find out together because I'm still learning so many things. You know, design is one of those you never stop learning, I think, because I think the moment you do, you're getting passed up by someone. There's always someone who knows something different or has a different idea of how to do something that you're like, hey, I can learn from you. I did it just this last week. I asked a buddy of mine who works for the Rangers. I said, hey, I think I know how you did this, but I don't know. How did you do this thing? And he told me. And I was like, great. Not how I would have done it, but now I know. That's not how I thought you did it, but it's great. So now it's like, well, but now I know how he did it, and I know how I thought I would do it. So I could play both ways and be like, hey, how did my way turn out versus the way he did it? And what did I learn from it?
There are, I guess, to gain experience, right? To gain real world experience. To gain that, there are places that do internships without the need for college, you know, credit. You know, obviously that's like a thing when you're looking for internships. A lot of places won't accept you as an intern because they make sure it's college credit. But there are places, and even like there are places that if you go up to them, be like, hey, I'm learning XYZ. I would love to, you know, work and learn from you. Could I potentially be an intern in some capacity? You know, just asking places, that can work too.
The worst that they can say is no. I found a job that way. I literally got in my car, went to a t-shirt place for one summer, was like, hey, I'm looking to do this when I thought t-shirts were super cool. I did a lot of t-shirts in college. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
can I work here? And they're like, yeah, sure. Learned so much. I learned so much about t-shirts and then realized I don't like doing t-shirts. That's what I learned. I was like, oh, I really don't like doing t-shirts anymore. So I tend to avoid t-shirt design. If people ask me for it, I'm like, no,
Mm-hmm.
thanks though.
Yeah.
Not really for that one.
I guess to kind of sum up the college thing, right? To
Yeah.
sum up the college thing. Right now, there are so many easily accessible forms of education within the design space, within the creative space in general, right?
Yeah.
Video editing, photo editing, graphic design,
Oh, so
logos,
much.
branding as a whole, motion design, photography,
Oh my
videography,
gosh.
whatever the hell, creative realm you want to go in. There are so many different avenues that are, if you want to pay, are are a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
Skillshare, that's the only one that comes to mind right now.
I mean, some colleges even offer just courses outside of enrollment.
Yeah.
I took a continuing education course through Southern Methodist University out in Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
SMU, for UX design one time. I paid some money for it, but it was a whole lot cheaper than
Going to
a year
college.
at school. Yeah, but I still got the education that I needed for it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are ways to, you know, invest in your education without a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Skillshare is a good one.
There's,
YouTube's a free one.
yeah, YouTube's a free one. More
YouTube's
importantly,
a free one. Uh, I mean, there are so many options to learn, and even just asking other people how to do it.
mm-hmm.
That I think it's a double-edged sword of, yeah, you can go and
Mm-hmm.
get experience, or you cannot go and still get experience. There are always, I, I think that the problem is you're going to have some employers who are just hung up on, you don't have a degree. It's sorry, you just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that you will see potentially a wave of people who are just like, who cares if you have a degree or not?
Mm-hmm.
Can you do the job? Are you good at your job? That's
Mm-hmm.
that that's my, that's kind of where I see it. As someone who's hired people before, it's like, you can have a piece of paper that says went to college and be crappy at your job,
Mm-hmm.
or you can have not a piece of paper and be great at your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. There's so many. Yeah, again, there's just so many different avenues and so many different aspects of education that are outside of the collegiate space.
Yeah,
So much access to those forms of information that you can just have and you don't have to pay a dime for. Granted, it's your time, and obviously you have to take time out of, because obviously if you go to college,
yeah,
right, your time is dedicated to college. Rather, if you're not
yes,
in college, you also have to deal with, okay, well, if I'm not in college, granted, you're 18, 19 years old, traditionally 18, 19 years old, starting college or starting that education, you're probably going to have a job to deal with. You're going to have
yep,
potentially people breathing down your neck about not going to college, whether that's your environment, or, I don't want to say you're lucky, but you're in that where you have people, your support system around you are
yeah,
completely, all for supporting you, and that's great. But whatever the situation may be, take in mind that if you aren't going to college, you are still going to have to juggle those factors and commit yourself to something that you want to learn, right? They're still going to have that time investment, possibly not as much as, obviously going to an hour and a half, 2 hour, two and a
yeah,
half studio class or whatever the hell it is in college. That's how long my classes were for design classes. But you're still going to have to take the time out of your day and commit that to learning, that craft and that skill.
yeah,
But, there are a lot of avenues,
yeah,
to, like Crew mentioned, asking questions, talking to people that are within the space directly. Rather, sometimes I know my collegiate professors, whether they're listening or not, they've mentioned a couple times, they were out of the industry for a while when they started teaching. So they're teaching aspects of design that may be a little dated. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
the methods of design and the programs obviously update with everything, and it's usually pretty close to the same. But the, trends and industry standards and ways of learning, those type of things change so fast. So being able to, you know, develop those connections and be able to not be afraid to ask questions and be afraid to learn on your own, and those type of things, it's just, that's just what it's going to be.
And it only gets harder the older you get with more responsibilities. I got wife and I got wife and one kid and second one on the way, and it's like, okay, where's my opportunity to learn something new?
Mm-hmm.
Where can I practice beyond just what I do during the day?
Mm-hmm.
It's where's this spot? Where's this thing? And sometimes it's, I'm going to make the time, and sometimes it's like, well, I didn't get it. But when I was young, oh man, oh yeah, I had all the time, and it's just practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the hard thing. It's like you think about like, oh yeah, I do it 8 hours a day or whatever. It's like, well, there's still time to practice. There's still, you got to have that time to explore and try something new.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also education too,
Mm-hmm.
of just, hey, I'm practicing. What are you practicing? I'm just trying it out. I'm practicing see what this button does.
Mm-hmm.
You're just learning new things, and you know, education doesn't have to be watching the video or in a classroom. It can just literally be
Mm-hmm.
trying stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what happens. Wonder what that would look like.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, man, I mean, we touched on everything that we wanted to touch on.
Man.
I
Yeah.
think it was an awesome episode. I mean, a little bit, of a different opinion on the, getting an opinion from someone about the whole college and education aspect of things, getting a different opinion, which is awesome. Being able to hear, a couple different sides of it and a couple different point of views of it. That's a pretty common topic, especially now when people keep saying, whether it's entry level or even I've seen a couple, supervisor positions within the sports design space that are getting paid chunk change compared to what they should be getting paid. So, those type of things are, and they're requiring degrees, those type of things are, making things a little bit more apparent to, raising the question and being able to get opinions on the matter, and people that have done it and now looking back on, was it worth it? Should I have done something else? What am I going to tell people that are going to come after me? Those type of things.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed college. It was fun. But I don't know if I'd go back again for a design degree or whatever. I think if I went back, it would be for something very specific, use accounting for an example, or to teach yourself an accounting degree. But
yeah, for sure. Well, man, I appreciate the time today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you coming out and hanging out and talking shop for a little bit. Again, for the listeners that are still listening in, I know sometimes you can tell when we're wrapping up, so you may click out. But for the people that are listening still, go down below, check out Crew's links, connect with Crew. He said a bunch of times, ask him questions. He'll be more than happy to answer and help out and lend a helping hand. That type of thing. So yeah, go down below, check out all of Crew's stuff. Thank you for listening to episode 40 of the Creative Process Podcast with myself, Jared Klein. We will see you next week with another episode, and make sure you tell someone that you love them. All right, we will see you next week. Peace.